So we wanted to just get your initial thoughts on this deal that was reached and kind of how we got to this point after Democrats holding out for so long to now all of a sudden have a deal where they aren't getting the subsidies that many Democrats were holding out for. They're just getting a vote for it in the future.
Well, the combined pressures of the Trump administration's hard line on SNAP benefits, basically saying we're not going to, obey the court, or we're going to challenge the court, and we're going to leave 42 million people, millions of children, millions of elderly, without any means of purchasing food. The average benefit is about $350 a month. Some states, like Rhode Island, are trying to fill the gap, but that was an untenable long-term position for the Democrats. And combine that with the flight disruptions for the last couple of days, anybody who was traveling, this affects Republicans and Democrats and independents alike. Everyone's trying to get to places and their whole trip is ruined. And that puts a lot of pressure on both sides. And I think at the end of the day, the Trump hardline on SNAP really caused the Democrats to snap.
It's interesting that this comes less than a week after Democrats won big in the election this year. And then many people are seeing this as some Democrats caving. What do you think that says about the state of the party and where things go from here?
That's a great question, but I think it's the wrong interpretation of the Democrats' victory last week. The Democrats' victory in Virginia and in New Jersey was really driven by independent voters who basically went from Biden 2020, Trump 24, Democrat in New Jersey and Virginia in 2025, meaning that the independents are coming back to the Democrats because they want centrism. They want people who have practical policy solutions, who are not so embedded or so confined by ideology. That's the message, plus higher Democratic turnout. So the Democrats are engaged, but there's a mixture of views in the Democratic Party, and the Democrats need the independent vote to win elections against the Republicans. Trump proved that by winning them back in 24. So the read on that was that practical solutions to making government run well is a message that will work and win you the election. And that's what the 8 senators said basically yesterday when they were explaining why they were voting with the Republicans to open the government, that their job is to make government run well. And at this point, they weren't going to get the concession they wanted. And the pain was increasing on a lot of people, and they thought it was too much pain.
When it comes to that vote that's been agreed upon for mid-December on these Affordable Care Act subsidies, do you think anything will change as we approach that, or will Republicans just put it up for a vote and then strike it down?
So for those of the audience who are Republicans thinking, President Trump got a victory, Republicans got them to cave, I think in the short term, that's probably the right interpretation. But the longer term, this December vote is a setup for the Republicans. Because in 2018, the Democrats ran on healthcare because the Republicans were trying to repeal Obamacare. And they used those votes against them the entire election year, and they won the House back. They won more than 40 seats in the House. They are going to be the exact same thing to the Republicans in 2026. If the Republicans do not extend these subsidies, it will be, if not the first, the second biggest issue in the midterm campaign. And it will give the Democrats the exact same issue. You're trying to undermine 12 million people's health care. And that's powerful. It's worked for them before. So in some ways, they lose in the short-term appearance. But in the long term, denying the extension of Obamacare subsidies gives the Democrats a major issue going into 2026 for the midterms. And one last thing on elections, the 8 senators who voted with the Republicans are either retiring or they are not up for re-election until 2028 at the earliest. So in that sense, they took the hit for the team because they're not facing the Democratic electorate in 2026.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about that and that key point that so many of them are not up for election for years or they're retiring. Do you think that there was some inner workings behind the scenes with some of the Democrats who are publicly saying, I do not support this because they're up for re-election sooner, but then we're actually okay with others taking that hit?
Gabriella, the people who are listening who are Democrats and hoping the Democrats are that organized would love that explanation. I think it's a perfectly viable explanation to say, for all that Senator Schumer is taking criticism, this was orchestrated, right? The people who can afford to take the political hit within the Democratic Party, who are not subject to a primary challenge next year because they're not up for re-election, they're the ones that could get things going again. And most importantly, preserve SNAP benefits for another year. It's not just till January. The SNAP funding will stay intact for a whole year, and the Trump administration can't restrict it or cancel it. I think in the end of the day, for the Democratic Party constituency and their policy goals, that is a victory. And I'm sure you're going to hear more about that from the Democrats who are now somewhat under siege.
We've heard a lot of criticism for Leader Schumer. When we asked Senator Whitehouse about this today, he didn't say that he felt there was a need for a new leader. He just said Democrats now need to move past this and come together. What do you think this means for the future of the party? Do you think that a new leader is likely in the Senate?
I don't think that the Senate Democrats will choose a new leader. You know, Nancy Pelosi faced criticism from the most liberal wing of her party when she was speaker. And in the end of the day, the compromise that was reached was that she agreed that she would step aside eventually, which is what she did. She just announced her full retirement, but she stepped aside for Hakeem Jeffries. I do think you're going to see that Senator Schumer will say he's not up till 2028, that he may step aside, you know, in 2027 after the 26 elections. But let's wait and see what happens, because if the Democrats retake the Senate, it's a long shot. But if they do, then why get rid of Schumer? So I think this remains to be seen. But in the end of the day, it's very important to look at the electoral pressures. And there just simply were not the electoral pressures on those 8 senators. They could take the hit. They could reopen the government. And now the Democrats can pivot 100% to health care, which is exactly politically, I think, where they want to be going into the 26 midterms.
Perfect. Is there anything else you want to add you think is important to note?
I think this shutdown resolution, should it happen, you know, should we finally get the government open again, hopefully Speaker Johnson's saying by Wednesday, you have to give some political credit to President Trump for playing much harder politics than I think people estimated. I think it's a very expensive price to pay to deny people food. But politically speaking, the president stood firm, very firm. And in the end of the day, that gave him a political victory. That's a lesson to the Democrats going forward about what they're up against with this president.